Welcome, one and all. It is another exciting edition of 4020 Not Live, the programme that talks about rugby league, because nobody else does. Oh, no, everyone else has got a podcast these days. Phil is here, as is Danika. She's back. Despite the fact, was it twice now you've been on the Super League show?
Yes, it is. It's twice now.
And still comes back to slum it with us on the internet. So, that's...
I know, you know what? I know where my roots are. Always come back to what you know, don't you?
Her fee has doubled, to be fair.
Yeah, and now get 2 cups of coffee and 4 biscuits.
Four biscuits. And also joining us, making his debut, as Ray French would say, is author, and what else would you like to be described as, Andrew Quirke?
Raconteur will do it.
Raconteur and wit. I've got one of your books here, look.
Oh, wow.
I've got props today. Usually I always forget my props. Go on, I'll quickly ask you about the grand final, since you're still buzzing, aren't you?
Still on cloud 9, Welsby's miracle. The greatest end to the greatest grand final. I was lucky enough to be at Whitehall at the old Knowsley, and I said at the time, we're never going to see anything as dramatic and as impactful. And I think we topped it. It was just absolutely sensational. And yeah, I'm still on cloud 9, still haven't come down. So all my friends and family know that if they want anything from me, now's the time to
ask. Phil, we have to start with Kevin Sinfield, who has not been knighted yet and may not be. And I don't think he would care if he was or not, because what he's done in the last week for his mate has been quite amazing.
Yeah, I think I on social media, I equated it to Captain Tom Moore, that this is something that is beyond whether you like rugby league or not, whether you follow sport or not. This is touching a nation's humanity at a time when they really need it most, and it's about friendship and camaraderie and humanity and what it means to, well, Claire Balding said it this morning on Breakfast Telly. It's an expression of love in its purest form. And if ever the world needed an expression of love, it's now what everybody's been through. I mean, apart from the fact that he's done a ridiculous physical endurance feat, which Danika will be able to speak to us about how phenomenal that is, as with the greatest respect to the two gentlemen on my screen here, she is the athlete amongst us.
Loosely.
But what people probably don't realise as much is the amount of work Kevin's done around this whole thing. The media conferences he's done, the vlogs he's done with sufferers of MND, the fact that he's never lost sight of the fact that Rob is his primary inspiration, but it's about everybody who's suffering from this terrible disease, and the raising awareness has been as important as raising funds, and the work that you have to put into that while your body is absolutely aching and you need to, well, for me, I'd be, laying on a bed in a dark room crying. But he's needed to be in ice baths and refuel himself, but he's even put all of that to one side to make sure that this message was continually got across, and I think that's a measure of the man. It's very hard to sum it up, because I think, having had the privilege of watching him lead a team, this doesn't come as a surprise. This is who he is. This is what he believes. He's got a wonderful set of parents who brought him up in a way whereby humanity is first and foremost, and this is an expression of it. So yeah, we could all get very emotional about this, but there's 2 levels. One is what he's done is phenomenal, and we shouldn't, quite rightly, extol that. The other thing is, he has put rugby league in a place that even the sensational grand final that Andrew just talked about hasn't been able to do. Now, that's not a criticism of anybody. It's hard to get rugby league noticed. But when somebody trends for an entire day, when somebody who is not known by other sports people until he does something like this, and yet they're all putting out how very rugby league this is, and it doesn't surprise them, then he's done so much more than what he thinks he's done, or what he'll allow himself to take the credit for doing. And again, one of the things I find absolutely amazing is he will never refer to himself. He always talks about the team. It has to be about the team. It's the team of people I've had around me. It's the team that have got the media exposure. It's the team that are around Rob Burrow. You know, but actually, what this is, and I don't care if he doesn't want to hear it. It's about him. He's an exceptional man.
Yeah, it's just incredible, isn't it? Because there was a big quote today where his wife said to him, you know, if we were to double the amount of money, would you do it again? He would just, without even questioning it, said yes. You know, and that, like you say, Phil, it goes on to just show you how much of a phenomenal man he is, because he didn't even want to think about his body or what it must be going through. Like, seriously, what that must be going through. You know, the idea of raising the money and doubling it automatically was just a yes. And that's, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how tired he's feeling, how sore he's feeling, you know, regardless of how well he's been looked after, his recovery, his nutrition, you know, the physios, the ice baths or whatever. They're under no doubt that his body is hurting, you know, and to just say, yes, I do it again is, I don't know. I don't even know if you can comprehend that.
I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't keep fit still, but he's been retired a few years. It's not as if he's in peak playing condition either, is it?
Well, it gives him an opportunity, doesn't it? He has trained a different way. He is a runner now, and I'm not saying that that's anything, but no, like, he doesn't have to train anymore, doesn't have to stay fit. He does it purely now. Well, let's say for the fun of it, you know, I think once you're an athlete, you've always got the element of needing to keep fit or needing to do something, and exercise is the way to release that. But it's a totally different way, you know, like, you go from being a rugby player where you have to think about your strength, your power, maybe your speed, maybe your agility, or you think about your skill-based stuff, and it's completely different. Whereas I can honestly hold my hands up to anybody that can run for that length of time. As much as he's had a team around him, it's quite difficult to chat whilst you're running that. And under 4 hours every single time, he's going at some pace, you know. So he's not going to be able to communicate that well. So it's not like he's standing having a chat with his mates. It's quite a solitary kind of exercise as well, isn't it? Like, you have got people cheering you on and things, but you're in your own head a lot there, you know. And for a guy that thinks and is about the people and about the bigger picture, he's doing a lot of thinking, isn't he?
You know, here's the problem, Andrew. We support rival sides to Leeds. You've obviously been at the wrong end of results in grand finals. I mean, they show the Rob Burrow try all the time in the minute. You know, we're just happy to beat them every so often. The problem is, as much as I say we all hate Leeds and all that, they're just too classy a club, and you just have to respect them. And it sticks in their throat, doesn't it, Andrew? It sticks in their throat.
You know what, though? It just makes me reflect. There's some incredibly special people who play this sport. You know, you look at what Kevin's done this week, which is absolutely sensational. Rob himself, Mossy Meso, and obviously the great Steve Scott. And what they overcome mentally as well as the physical challenge is absolutely remarkable. And maybe we shouldn't be surprised, because rugby league is that ultimate test of mind, body and soul, if you like. But I think we're really lucky to follow this sport, because to have people like that associated with the sport who are so inspirational, we'll even let them have the four grand finals that they did against us. So, you know, that's that nice as it can be, I think.
Phil, you know him better than most because you've been around Leeds for so long, and as has Sir Kevin. It strikes me that there's no ego here. You see plenty of times people do things for charity, and it's all about them and how well they've done, and oh, here I am with a big check and whatever. And as you say, we should praise him rightly, but this is not about Kevin. To Kevin Sinfield, this is not about Kevin Sinfield.
He wouldn't do it if it was going to be about him. I think it's a tweet. Can you hear me?
There's some noise from somewhere, trying to work out where it's from. Oh, it's Danika, that's why. I've muted you both. You can put yourself back on in a minute. Phil, speak.
Sorry, start again. Yeah, I mean, ego is a word that isn't part of his vocabulary, and there was a tweet, and there have been so many. I can't remember who it was from, but I think it was a Wigan player who said, you know, you can see now why Leeds was so hard to beat when he was the captain of the team, and I think that is all part of it. I don't really know where to start with Kevin, because whilst we say he embodies all of the qualities of the sport, there aren't so many people even within the sport that are as selfless as he is. And he would hate this to be turning into the kind of eulogy that it is. But that's the truth. And when he came back to Headingley and started saying things like, need to get the culture back, for want of a better expression, none of us really fully understood what that meant. But he knew in his mind the kind of people that he wanted within the club and the kind of attitude that was side before self, to borrow a phrase from down the road in Leeds. And I think the illustration of that came yesterday, because he's had a couple of running partners who are mentally extremely strong, which is needed alongside him, who were guys he used to play with. So, Jamie Peacock runs alongside you. You're going to try and match him stride for stride. But Jamie doesn't say a lot. Yesterday, I think Kevin's admitted, was the toughest day for him, the 6th one. He had all the emotion of the Saturday afternoon meeting Rob, which I'm told Kevin didn't know he was going to be there. So as well as being tired and trying to cope with the physical endurance, he's got that emotional pull as well. And so Sunday then became a really tough day, and it started out in the dark and the pouring rain, and it was going around the same course that he'd been the day before. But he had with him Jamie Jones Buchanan. Now Jamie was only supposed to run, I think, about just more than a half marathon, because he doesn't really do marathons. I think he's done one in his entire life, and he'd said during the week that after 18 miles his body falls apart. But not only did he stick in there and do the whole marathon, chivying Kev along all the way, and not only did he eat a Mars bar halfway through it, which apparently is unheard of in marathon running, but he did it in under 4 hours. And there's no way he should be able to do that. And I think when you've got people like that supporting you, and that's the kind of person that Kevin's brought into the club on the coaching staff, I think you can start to get a picture of what Kevin would mean by culture. I think Danika's probably best placed, again, from all of us, to talk about dressing rooms and leadership and captaincy, and how teams, when they look at each other, can see the whites of their comrades' eyes and know that they're going to get through a really dark place together. I don't think those of us who watch it and are privileged enough to write about it understand anything of that, which is why it's absolute complete nonsense that you ever have to mark a player. But I am bowled over by this, and I know he won't want to take the credit, but I just think for a minute we need to focus on his life values and say, with full sentiment, the world would be a better place if we were just all a little bit more Kev.
Do you reckon Pete Smith's been marking his marathons out of 10 in the paper this week?
Well, I noticed he hasn't been doing.
Well,
you've muted yourself, Danika. You unmuted yourself, now you've muted yourself again.
Well, I can't do technology. I play rugby, I'm a prop. What do you expect?
Okay. So that's fine.
Joe, we had last season both Kev and Jonesy came in and spoke to us at different points of the season. And the first one was Kev. And when we moved from being part of the foundation, so we were Leeds Runners Women as part of the Leeds Runners Foundation, so the community side. And then obviously being successful in 2018, we came across and we were then under the banner of the men and the Leeds Rhinos team. And we were as one. Kev came in and he delivered the same PowerPoint that he delivered to the men's team. And it was about the culture and what it means to wear the badge and how important the badge is. And again, I think he's not necessarily wearing Leeds Rhinos badge at the minute. He is, because obviously teammates and the history and everything. But he's wearing the MNDA badge, but he's also wearing that number 7 badge. And it talks about how much of a privilege it was for him to wear the vest that had number 7 on. And one of Kev's things that you kind of always remember, it's kind of about expectation versus how you want to be perceived. And the expectation could be that Leeds Rhinos are a great club. The expectation could be that Kev Sinfield is a great man, but it's not good enough to live alone and to ride that expectation wave. You have to earn it yourself, and it's all about personally, do you believe that you should be wearing that badge? Or personally, have you worked hard enough for that? Or are you doing what you can for your teammate in order to do that badge the honour? And I think that's exactly how he lives his life and lives, has run this extraordinary, ridiculous amount of mileage by knowing himself that he's done that badge honour. And the badge this time, it means so much more than the Leeds Rhino badge. Like, obviously, to play for Leeds Rhinos is an incredible feat, to win the medals and the trophies that he's won, to captain the side for such a long time. But I don't think that comes anywhere close to running for your best mate, for your teammate, or for such a huge, debilitating disease that is, hasn't yet found a cure. So he's running for such a bigger kind of purpose at the minute that he's doing that badge of Rob and of MND. So proud that he literally lives by that, and the same with JJB, he came in and he gives us so many analogies and so many stories, as you can probably guess with Jonesy. But he talks about an egg, and what's the most important part of that egg being the middle and being the yolk, and the shell is the thin outer layer, then you've got, the white, and each layer is a layer of the team and is a layer of your support. And how do you maintain the strength of that inner part of the egg? I know it's really random, and when he first put a picture of an egg on the board, we were all like, Jonesy, I know you're philosophical, mate, but this is gone west. But again, I heard that Jonesy wasn't meant to run as far as he ran yet, but it doesn't surprise me. The guy doesn't have a limit. The guy doesn't have an end button. I've never known somebody push as hard or work as hard or be able to break barriers as much as Jonesy does. So it was absolutely not a surprise at all. But having had those two both speak to us on a rugby point of view, taking all of what they said, their ethos, their morals, their values, anything that encompasses who they are and what they work for, it absolutely resonates in what they've done and how they've done it. So it is an incredible thing.
I mean, not to give people a clue as when we're recording this, but the ITV News is on in front of me, and there he is, doing his running and talking to everyone.
What do you mean you watch ITV?
Well, I was watching BBC earlier, I flicked over. I watch all the channels. I'll put Al Jazeera on, see if he's on there later. I guess to wrap up this bit, Andrew, and you mentioned Steve Prescott earlier, it's people who use their celebrity is the wrong word, their status to do good for other people, and as you say, it's a trait in many people involved in our sport, thankfully.
Yeah, it's that selfless nature of people, and I think when you're going through something that's incredibly painful, like this horrible, debilitating disease, to think about raising money and raising awareness and putting other people first. I watched the BBC documentary on Rob, and I found it a really difficult watch. It took me quite a few goals to get all the way through it, because his dignity, his bravery, it's absolutely incredible. And I think that I think there's something special about the people who play this sport. They've got something about them that sets them apart from us mere mortals.
Do you know, there's two things that strike me there. The first is, what can we get Kevin to do now that builds on this? Now, that's not for us to tell him what to do, but I just think it will be a lost opportunity for the sport because of the profile he's given it. If we can't, being an ambassador for the World Cup is fine. It's going to be front and centre, but he now has got an influence, and he's got a voice that maybe nobody else in the sport has at the moment. And he's not into personal accolades, so people can say he deserves a knighthood as much as they like. I'm not even sure he'd want one. He's not that kind of a person. But certainly, I think we need to find a role for him. And I don't mean that I don't want him to be the director of rugby at Leeds. I just think he now has the ear of virtually everyone in the country: politicians, sports people, administrators, funds, sponsors, broadcasters. He is probably everything we've been calling for all the time we've been doing this program. That needs a spokesperson, and he could be that. So let's get him in the jungle.
Oh no! You know, put him in the jungle, get him on Strictly. At least then you get to do some dancing for weeks, and you're in the warm.
No. The jungle's a better one.
Yeah, but it's only in Wales this year, and no offence to our Welsh.
no.
At least if it's in Australia, he gets to go, over there and in
Yeah, so he's got a whole.
when he gets kicked out.
Yeah, so this one's finished. So it's next year. We'll be back in Australia.
Danika, Strictly's on BBC. Remember your loyalty.
Yeah, hang on, yeah.
Yeah, I also know this, but also as a dancing background, I know which one I prefer.
When you're a female sports,
well, we've cracked
Dancing
it.
on ice.
You on Strictly, Kevin in the Jungle.
Oh no, I want to go on the ice.
They won't like the people won't like you on Strictly anyway because of your dance background. They'd be annoyed at you. You see.
Yeah, but they don't know who I am, so you just pretend that I'm not a dancer. I just go in as a prop, big burly. I'll put on a few kgs beforehand. I reckon I can manage that.
7 marathons in 7 days. Yeah, the chocolate.
Oh, I mean, what Snickers? Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
That's about my limit.
I like the peanuts. So yeah, well, Strictly dancing on ice. At least don't send him on Big Brother though. That's
No, I mean taking that paternalistic role on in the Jungle that I don't watch clearly, and doing the old putting his arm around everybody and being the rock and the confidant. And if Kevin wasn't here, we'd never have got through the trials. And obvious next step for him, isn't it?
He could go on the Crystal Maze like Gareth Thomas was on last week. So that's the basis of my article next month because there's nothing else on TV.
I don't know if we're selling this short now because we're clutching, aren't we?
I'm joking.
I know I'm not, but I mean, 100% would want to go on one of them. Get him on one of them.
Well, I mean, there hasn't. I did the analysis of this earlier this year. I think since Sir Ellery on Dancing on Ice, I don't think there's been a rugby league person on. I know Martin Chariots Ophir of the chant fame, which is always a load of nonsense propaganda.
Yeah.
On the first season of first series rather Strictly, but no, rugby league people don't. Even on Celebrity MasterChef, where the bar is very low as to what is a celebrity. What's going on?
I'd struggle on that program. I don't think beans and toast is that much of a meal, is it?
What's going on behind you?
I'm sorry, I was just distracted by 2 cats falling down the stairs.
The cats are fighting.
I love cats.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Cameo role for Bubble and Squeak.
Great names. You didn't fancy call them Kevin, Rob, or something like that?
Oh, well, I would have done had it been around this time, but it was a while ago.
What else is happening in Rugby League this week? We'll look back on the year in general, but people are making signings now. That's exciting. Is it next week when we're getting excited about who's going to be in Super League to get relegated next year? That's exciting. And the Championship. Everyone's got new kits out. Do you like the new Rhinos kit, Danika?
I do. I didn't, but I do now.
The away one.
I wasn't. Yeah, I like the colours. I wasn't so sure. I'm glad that they wore it for the Challenge Cup because I wasn't so sure on it. And then I saw it and I did actually quite like it. It's the collar thing that gets me.
I've helpfully spent all my furlough money on the new Wakefield shirt. Kiss the badge.
It looks quite dark.
But it's not mine. And the away kit's out soon. And if it's what I think it is, then it's gonna break the internet. If it's not, then forget I said this.
Is it turquoise or aqua, as I think we're allowed to have to call it?
Possibly. Well, everyone's going for that, aren't they?
Yeah.
I did like Hull's shark-inspired shirt yesterday. That was good. And
halfbacks is a good topic.
They're all foreign.
Well, that's exactly. Hull and Huddersfield have signed Aussies, which I think our good friend John Davidson mentioned. Now there's only Castleford and Hull KR that have a British halfback combination. So without getting xenophobic about it, it is about who are the best players around. Is it now harming our chances of bringing through the next generation if every club's default position is let's get somebody experienced over from the other side of the world?
Well, the problem is I'm speaking to your Leeds, Danika's Leeds, Andrew's St Helens. You actually bring through young British players, so you're the wrong people to speak to. But I guess, Andrew, it is a concern for the league, especially from John's analysis, that one of those teams is the team that finished bottom last year with the 2 English halfbacks.
It's a massive concern, and I think that's why we've seen, unfortunately, England struggle. And with the recent Great Britain Lions documentary where they went away and didn't win a game, and that's an absolute key position. Your spine of the team, you 1, 6, 7, and 9. I think there are players who are coming through. We've got obviously Lewis Dodd at St Helens, who's very highly thought of, and it could actually be him and John Lee Lomax in the house for Saints next year, with Farge spelling the Terminator James Roby at 9. But it can't just be Saints, Wigan and Leeds producing these young players. And I'll point the finger a little bit at clubs like Warrington and Hull, who've got big budgets but do tend to spend it on the overseas players, which is fine to back up your youth, but they tend to be signing players. If we look at Greg Inglis and Josh Reynolds, the wrong side of 30, and what sort of message does that put out really to youth and junior development?
And those are the two clubs, Andrew, we always stick the boot into, because, you know, as we said before, yes, the teams who only win the title are Saints, Wigan and Leeds, but it's up to everyone else to catch up with them, and their recruitment for both of those clubs has not been right yet to beat these other three.
No, it's not, and I think probably you could argue they maybe spend more money on signing players than the likes of Saints and Leeds, who do, you know, rely on that academy and junior development. But also, I think that helps your local junior players will be more likely to go to Saints and Leeds because they think I'll get that opportunity. Same with Wigan as well. Wigan have, you know, really developed their young players, and I feel sick saying that, but it's okay. And it's up to the rest of the league to do that. But my concern is, if we're looking at the structure of Super League next year, when we're bringing a 12th club in, and yet again they're going to be on 60% of the funding. Everybody's doing the transfer business in the past couple of weeks, so they're going to be scratching at the scraps really, and they're not going to have the funds to deal with it. Do set ourselves to fail, I think.
But you know, can I play? If I play devil's advocate on that, yeah, there's a lot of the internationals coming across. But what better way to develop our players and our youth? You're only going to get better by playing against the best. And if you've got, you know, the likes of, let's say, I don't know, Cal McClelland and Harry Newman, when they come back into it, playing against some of the best players that we've seen play from Australia or wherever they come from, you know, they're only going to get better because they have to think better, they have to move better, they have to read plays better. These cats are still going mental. You know, and yeah, that it might not give a spot for the younger generation to come through as yet, but we're prepping them, you know, and then we might see them go off to Australia, or we might see them step up when, like you say, they're the wrong side of 30. So it's about, to be the best, you've got to beat the best, haven't you? And it's giving them something. What's the point in playing against somebody that or competing for a shirt against somebody that's not that much better than you? You know, raise the game, raise the bar. You know, we've got an Aussie halfback. You know, we've got girls fighting for a shirt, and thankfully for Courtney, she's the one that goes, you know, come along, train with me. It's only going to make them better. So when Courtney, and who is the wrong side of 30 for sure, hangs up her boots, hopefully somebody that she's trained with or helped will step in and emulate what she kind of brings to our game as well. So is it not the same, or am I just being too
I know happy? The world has changed a lot, and it was the anniversary this weekend of when Wakefield played Hull in '84 and making their debuts for either side were Peter Sterling and Wally Lewis. Now, granted, that quality of player aren't going to come over here and play in Super League anymore because of the differences in times and blah, 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 blah. Isn't the problem, though, that some of the players who come over, are they much better than the younger British players they're keeping out of the teams?
I think the interesting thing is money, because if we are going to review what 2020 has been like, look forward in any way that you possibly can to what 2021's landscape might be, it's going to be determined and dictated by money. And I don't know how much of a risk Hull have taken again, in the same way that Warrington do, to use a lot of their limited salary cap money on a halfback who may well turn out to be the most exciting signing in Super League next year, but actually is coming a little bit under an injury and slight loss of form cloud. And you know, Greg Inglis at his peak, if you could have got him, that would have been equivalent to getting Wally Lewis and Peter Sterling. But you're getting him again after he's been away from the game for a year. So yeah, it might well be that what Warrington are paying him reflects that it's almost like he's coming a little bit on trial in his first year, and he wants to challenge himself, and he wants to see what rugby's like played in a different hemisphere, and have a different life experience, which is exactly what Danny Medeiros did when he came over. People seem to think that he would have been because of his status in the game when he came, a massive signing, but actually, comparatively speaking, he was incredibly cheap because he wanted to end his career by experiencing playing rugby on this side of the world, and as it turned out, become one of the very few players to win a grand final winners medal on both sides of the world, to play at Wembley. Now, he didn't necessarily win at Wembley, but he wanted that experience that you couldn't get in Australia. And the Australian team had been based in Leeds every time they were here, and he sort of had a taste of the culture, and he wanted to spend a year or two, actually amongst it, bringing his kids over, and he loved it. He genuinely loved it. And had he not won a medal, he would have loved it, almost equally as much. So I think there are different reasons why players come over. My worry at the moment is this is a hell of a gamble in these times. I look at clubs like Helens. I think because Andrew's on this won the grand final, they are the team to look at. And I look at Jack Welsby and how they've integrated him into their team, how he is a fullback. Fullback is a very exposed position. So they played him on the wing. They were, they've really looked after him. Then moved him into the centre, and they didn't have to. There were other players that could have taken that role. And when he needed to, and I just think that is the way you bring on young people. You nurture talent. You decide how much of your cap is going to be spent on investing in the future, rather than constantly trying to find a quick fix. And if you were to accuse Hull or Warrington of anything, it's that they're always looking for that quick fix. And to bring the conversation back round to where it started, the so-called golden generation at Leeds did not have success at the beginning. When they all came through together, it took 3 or 4 years for them to make the mistakes and find their feet and combinations at senior level that they'd had at junior level before they started winning things. Once they started winning things, they couldn't stop. But there was patience at the beginning. There was investment in talent. And I'm not sure those other two, we may sit here in a year's time. Josh Reynolds is Man of Steel. Hull have won all 3 trophies, and we're sitting here going, it's the best transaction Hull ever did. Brett Hodgson's the best coach you could have ever possibly appointed, and well done, Adam Pearson. You're on the top of an open bus in Hull, and that's fine if it works. But I just think, with money being more paramount than it's ever been before, it's a risk. It's a gamble.
I'm going to assume we won't be here in a year's time celebrating Hull winning the treble. I don't know why. I'm not going to tip them. I don't know why. Well, I think I tipped Wigan at the start of this year, so it's close. It was only a few seconds away from going to Golden Point. But never mind. I've got completely distracted because I was going to ask Danika something, and I'd completely forgotten what it was now. It wasn't about cats, but I'm sure it'll come back to me in a minute. It's that kind of... She's staring at me. I'm under pressure now.
I know, I'm waiting.
I know, but I can't think what it was about. But it would have been about something exciting. And anyway... Hull. Oh, that was it. Greg Inglis. You obviously got the opportunity to have your photo taken with Sonny Bill Williams in his brief spell in Super League.
I thought it was his briefs.
I know, yeah. I was going to say, nobody's seen that picture yet.
Well, are you making a beeline for Greg Inglis next season?
100%, yeah. I'm an opportunist, and if the opportunity arises, then, so be it. I think there was one point with the Sonny Bill thing that I had Bob Beaumont at Leeds. Basically, was like, take me down to the changing rooms now. Take me down, and he took me down with Sophie, and we waited outside the changing rooms for him. Literally, I have never fangirled somebody so much in my life. But in my defence, I come from rugby union. So, you know, it's more than just Sonny Bill, you know, playing rugby league, because I don't think he did himself justice really playing in the Super League. So yeah, I mean, you know,
The good news is
if
Sonny
the
Bill
opportunity arises.
those games didn't exist, so it's all right. We can forget that he was rubbish now, so it was all right.
We did have a picture with him with the Challenge Cup. Grand final, one of our trophies.
You won them all apart from the league leader shields,
Yeah, so I remember it was Evie Jackson who I basically was. There was who took the photo? Can't remember who took it, but he basically said, I was like, take a picture, get a picture. And I ran to be next to him. I shoved Evie out of the way and I'm shoulder to shoulder with him. And she's in the picture, like pulling her eyelash back from her face because I whipped her across that quickly to get next to him. I initiated that photo. I was getting in prime position. I think I even shoved one of the trophies in his hand. It was probably the most extreme fangirl moment of my life. But and you know what? I did it, and I'm not ashamed.
The BBC
No
know
shame.
you like this. You're not like this. Well, you can't be like this on the Super League show. That's the good thing. Apart from to John Keir, but you know
I am a fan of his knowledge. Like watching games with him is something else. You know the way that he just speaks, and he doesn't. It's as if he's talking to himself about what's going on in the field. I literally stand in awe just listening to him. He's incredible. So cool. Like his knowledge is just insane. But yeah.
I'm sure he was in awe of your coat though, because I mean, A would have engulfed him, but B would have kept him warm.
Yeah. Well,
how have you found the telly stuff?
Yeah, cool. Scary. And obviously the way that telly works is quite different, isn't it? Because you run through things and then you film bits and pieces here and there. And so when there's a double header, Tanya would go off and do the post-match interview. Then we'd come and review the game, but she's already done the post-match interview and then would say something that she's found out. And I was like, oh yeah. You know, and it was so cool though. Like I think there's one thing to be able to be at live sport at the minute. You know, that was a massive privilege, and it's something that I don't take for granted. Like I know how lucky I am. Like with Phil, like you going to Wembley and stuff like that. Like you don't take it for granted. You know, in a pandemic and in the fact that nobody can go watch live sport. I'm at live sport, and to finally get to see Leeds play. I mean, I saw Saints a couple of times, which was all right. You know, it was meh. I mean, the great thing about that was, you know, seeing Jammer or hearing him at least, because what a voice he has on the field. But just to have that, I think the first time to do it with John was great because John has the knowledge and you bounce off somebody. But the second time to do it on my own with just Tanya was mega because one, I'm not very good at saying like I'm good at things or kind of taking a minute to realise that, you know, little small achievements. But I think for Super League to have me on the show on my own means I must have been all right the first time. So I was really conscious of that. And like I had a bit of paper and Tanya kind of laughed. She was like, have you done your homework? And I'd just written notes down. I was like, absolutely, no shame at all. I've made notes. And she was like, actually, you know, they really were really impressed that I'd actually gone to the trouble to do that. So, you know, and John, the producer, messaged me afterwards to say, you know, it really impressed and they want to use me again. And, you know, fingers crossed, maybe when the BBC come round and the World Cup comes round and the women's game needs covering, you know, maybe there'll be an opportunity there to do a bit more. And hopefully next season when it gets back to normal, they'll still want me to be on. And Tanya's mega, like she's a real friend now, which is really lovely. We message about what coach she's buying or what runs we've been doing or exercises or, you know, and it's quite funny to think that, you know, she is a friend. You know, before the whole COVID thing, I went round for dinner and she is going to help me push that kind of side of my career as well. And she said not just because of a friend, but because I'm actually pretty good at it. So that's really lovely. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it's not something that I ever thought initially that I'd want to go into. But now, if I was to retire, when I retire, don't know about that. Not so much coaching because I don't think I've got the patience for it, but definitely that side. So yeah, fingers crossed. Hopefully, get more of that next year. And obviously, it all stems from doing these podcasts.
Well, of course.
So I have to remember my roots and thank you guys for putting me through my paces.
Yeah, and you see now the difference of working with professionals like Tanya and working with complete rank amateurs like us and just like wing it. It's it's a different world.
Yeah,
I mean, apart
says, I've forgotten the question I was going to ask you.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, I've seen her do a couple of takes. Nobody's perfect, but it's cool to see like how she works and to learn from how she does stuff. So, like, yeah, I think she's ace, and I am really grateful for. It's just like that thing I was saying to Andrew the other week, wasn't I? Like the opportunities in rugby league that I've had are just insane. You know, from even from this podcast, as much as you might mock it, like it's still mega. And I'd say to write in a column, but I'm sorry, Phil, for being very tardy. I'm probably not having as much content as I need to. You know, to do the BBC, to go into Wembley as a guest, you know, and you know, doing after dinner speeches, and had a really cool meeting this afternoon with Keith Senior at RL Care. So there's some stuff coming out, you know, for that, and yeah, just there's, you know, loads of little things in the pipeline, which is really cool, and it all comes from the women's game growing and you guys putting my ugly mug out there. So thank you to you guys, to be fair.
Send money.
It won't be long before she's walking past in the street ignoring.
Never, Phil. Excuse me, I'm going to confess something now. The first time I was on the BBC and I was driving to Henley, who did I phone in a panic?
What goes on the phone stays on the phone.
I know, but I'm not. I phoned my good, knowledgeable friend, and also, Rich, how many times have I messaged you to ask for advice or to ask about things? I'm not ashamed to say I know where my bread has been buttered, and I will stay true and loyal to the boys.
Usually trying to get some gossip, and I've got no gossip these days because I don't know anything.
To be fair, we've had the fair share of our mixing gossips.
My role in rugby league gets smaller and smaller by the minute. Andrew, it's something Danika mentioned there, and you'll have had the same thing as well. You can never take any of these experiences you have for granted, can you? Obviously, you've written plenty of books with some great names in the sport, and I think, you know, I've reported on this, that, and the other, and whatever. I think it's when you stop taking those things as anything other than not normal, then that's when the magic disappears, because it's an extraordinary world where we've got a privileged peak inside.
Massively, and I just think I'm incredibly fortunate when I look back at who I've been able to work with and put the stories down to print, because it's a big responsibility for someone to trust you with their life story and their career, and I've never took it for granted. I work full time, so this was something I've always just done as a sideline. But I mean, I've had friendships out of it, like the likes of Eric Chisnall, Graham West, albeit a Wigan legend, and I still think it's funny that a Saints fan wrote his book. But Paul Loughlin, when I finished his book, the last meeting that we did, Saints had beat Wigan in the Old Trafford Premiership final in '93, and he'd scored the winning try. And he gave me his shirt from that game. And gestures like that, it is magic. And now working with Danika, it's an absolute privilege to be working with her. She's got an amazing story, and it's some of the strongest material of anyone I've ever worked with. So, yeah, just incredibly, incredibly lucky.
We haven't mentioned this yet, but the book, it is being written. What's she like to work with? Because obviously, you must be getting sick of all the banter.
Oh no, I love it. It's tremendous. Danika's a joy to work with. I'd say the only thing about Danika is that every time we speak to each other, something else comes out that I wasn't aware of. Obviously, she's a Challenge Cup final winner, Grand Final winner, BBC pundit, podcaster, has performed at Disneyland, the Royal Albert Hall. She's one of these people who can turn her hand to everything, and she's really funny as well. And just going back to the Super League show, obviously I've not known Danika that long, but she was just so natural and came across so well. And like I was when I was watching it, I was like, I'm really proud to be working with her, you know, in this small way and helping her, you know, put a book to market. And she doesn't need me to do it. It's just that she's got 1,000,001 things to do. So I'm just facilitating the process. That's all.
She's on mute, so she can't answer back yet. But this is.
Oh, no, I'm not.
This is one thing that annoys me at the minute about. You don't have a degree in sports broadcasting, do you, Danika?
Nope. PE teaching.
And I'm getting a bit sick of people saying that if you've got a degree in sports broadcasting, you are more qualified to do the job than someone who hasn't. I am fully of the belief I can't play rugby league and have never been able to, despite trying my hardest. I just don't have the coordination or the ability or the skill or anything. And I think the same about, and it makes me sound like, I hate saying things like this because it makes it sound like this is an important thing. It's just, you know, talking into a microphone or whatever and whatever. I think you can either do it or you can't do it. And whether you've got a piece of paper that says you've got a degree in it, I think that means absolutely jack. You can either do this job or you can't. I can't write books. I've tried to write a million books, started them and never finished a single one. I've muted her again. But you obviously, Andrew, have the skill to do so. Phil has the skill of writing books. I can't do it. And it just annoys me when you get people, oh, well, such and such should be on the telly because they've got a degree. No, it doesn't mean anything. You can either be good and analyse a game and get across to the public at home what's going on, or you can't. And, you know, we've got some good pundits in rugby league. We've got some people who are not quite as good in rugby league. I never name them because it's not my place to do so on this programme. Just ask me when we're off air. You know, but, you know, it's not about a piece of paper. It's about the ability to do the job.
I think you can hone a craft.
Yes.
So I think there is such a thing as having a predisposition to doing something and then going into an educational environment where you learn the tricks of the trade. And I think, you know, Danika would confirm that one of the hardest things when you stood in front of a camera is all the people talking in your ear at the same time. And you've got to turn that part of your brain off that wants to listen to them and answer their questions and concentrate on, try and remember on whatever it was you were trying to say or whatever point you were trying to make. And I think, you know, people quite rightly say, how can anyone write about a sport that's never played it at the highest level? The fact is you can't. There are some things you can never know. So there are some intricacies that unless you have, you know, sweated the small stuff, you can't possibly know. But if you watch it for long enough, if you have an understanding of what it is you are supposed to be watching, if you can make comparisons between what you saw in the past and what you're seeing in the present, if you can come up with a well-reasoned argument as to why you've seen what you think you've seen, then I think you're absolutely at liberty to write about it. If you can do it in an entertaining and educational and informative way, then that's fine as well. But yeah, the only thing I would say is, you know, Danika's almost hinted that when the World Cup comes around, she hopes she get an opportunity to talk about the Women's World Cup. I hope she gets an opportunity to talk about the Men's World Cup. And the danger that we do have is that we will say, it's definitely not tokenism, but we want a whole set of women broadcasters, commentators and analysts on the Women's World Cup. Why not have, you know, Danika following Samoa around and telling us what's happening in the Men's World Cup as well, and doing the Women's World Cup, and and possibly the wheelchair as well, and you know, mugging up on that, or the PDRL World Cup. I just think it's like, I know you're a big fan of Mark Chapman. You've written about his skills and qualities, and that he can turn his hand to absolutely anything. The best broadcasters facilitate the best reaction from the people that they work with, and that's what he does so well. But he's multi-talented. You could give him the Challenge Cup final. You could give him a league game at Swinton. You could give him, a women's game on a muddy field in Hunslet. It would still have that same level of professionalism about it, and that's what I think you've got to aim at. Not necessarily, you know, a woman can only talk about the Women's World Cup, or because you didn't play the game, you're not allowed to talk about it.
Oh, she muted. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, and I think Phil, I totally agree. But I think there's a fine line, because I think the only I'm all right at what I do because I'm passionate about the sport. I've got an interest. It's a genuine hobby. Obviously, I play it, but I really love watching it as well, which helps. And I would go as far as to say that sometimes I'm often a rugby league geek, and I know about the NRL, and I know about the Super League and the Championship. I know about the women's game because obviously I'm part of it and I'm in it. And I think that's what makes me good. I think the thing about the difference between people being trained and going to degrees is that I don't know how well I do at actually interviewing somebody. What questions do you do? How do you respond if somebody gives you a one-word answer? Can you imagine having the skills to interview Darryl Powell after a loss? The guy is not easy,
And you've waited an hour and a half.
Exactly. Yeah, and you've got to wait around for it. That's the side of things, and then sometimes people have to take their own work and their own interviews and go and edit them, and so there's lots of other things to the whole media side of it. So I don't want to do a disservice. I think what does make you a good host or a pundit or however you want to do is when you're speaking about the sport. Like take John Keir, like we've mentioned, his knowledge is second to none. He is incredible at what he does. That's what makes him a great coach, and I think the reason that I get on with it so well and probably speak a bit more fluidly than other people is because I am a genuine rugby league geek, and I am proud of that. And I love the sport. I love the women's game. The women went and were back in training all together the other day, and it's great to follow and to see, and I've been part of that. And I understand the level, and I understand the pressures, and they are now in content that they're in the fight now for the World Cup squad. Like it started, it's there, and I know that pressure, and I know how that feels. So yeah, there's an element of having to play at that level and to understand it, but there is also just that I just really bloody love rugby league, and I really enjoy it, and I enjoy the ins and outs of it. It's the drama, the politics, the behind the scenes. So I think that helps. And then you go to the World Cup. What if the women that started playing rugby league? Would we have said then that it should have been on the same level as men? What if I go to the World Cup, fingers crossed, touch wood, whatever you need to do, and just host the Women's World Cup or just commentate on the Women's World Cup? Then in 4 years' time, because of the foundation I've done, a woman will go in and maybe they will follow Tonga or Samoa or something. And it's about building foundations. Like I think I don't often say no to anything because I know that somebody's got to build a foundation. And yeah, I'm all right at doing it. Because if you send a woman that's not so great at talking or isn't as confident, that woman or that representative is that blanket for the women's sport. So I have to be, it's a huge honour, but it's a huge pressure as well because I don't want to be rubbish because I don't then want people to think that women can't commentate or women can't be pundits. So I think there's a kind of a double-edged sword there that we have to set a platform and we have to set a foundation. If that's what I'm doing, then fair. Look, if I get to walk around the Women's World Cup, commentate just on that for a couple of weeks, I'd be really happy with just doing that. Hopefully I'll do a good job, and then the next time and maybe the next season. And I summarised with JD on the BBC radio for a men's game, and got really good feedback for that. So it's just small little things that you do, and as long as you're doing it well, you're going to set the platform for people. And don't get me wrong, I guess you never really retire properly from commentating and punditry, so it could be something that I do if I'm good at it for the foreseeable, up until I'm way past my playing days. But I think it's also just about building that foundation, and Jodie's doing a great job when she's on Sky Sports. I know that Lois has done a bit on the Challenge Cup, but they are confident women within sport. There's a couple of girls on my team that do not want to be spoken to, even as a post-match interview. So yeah, I mean, if you need me to follow Tonga or Samoa around for the Men's World Cup, I'm free.
If you have to,
absolutely.
You have to go in Sonny Bill's dressing room. You have to go in Sonny Bill's dressing room. I think the other thing that's important while Andrew's on as well is to talk about writing, because I think again it's a very, very different skill set, but it aids your understanding of the sport. And we're very fortunate that all four of us on here also write about the game. Admittedly, I wouldn't have quite so much grey hair if Danika came in a couple of days earlier, but it's a good one this month. And I think to be able to sit down and crystallise your thoughts in words is actually really important in helping you even broadcast or do something like this or go on the radio. All of these to me mesh together, and if you can get an experience of and maybe a grounding in all of them, I think each area is helped. I was I was incredibly fortunate that I started writing program articles, and hospital radio, fantastic groundings because you can, learn your craft, if that's what you want to call it. And I think, from following Andrew and, reading what he's written, and, clearly he's moved out of an area whereby rugby league is second nature to everybody to an area of the country where perhaps that it isn't. You've got to learn to get a message over in a really succinct and clear way, and this is we're all very lucky that we get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and I think for like the opportunity that I got with Andrew, which is absolutely amazing, for me it's not so much about my story, whether it be of interest to anybody or nobody. I think for me the main thing is the rise of the profile of the women's game and how huge that's been. Like I say, 5 years ago, when you're getting out of a car and you're getting changed, at home, cleaning up the dog muck from the pitch, and taking dibs on who's taking the kit home to wash it that night, to playing at Bolton or at St Helens on the BBC, the Sky Sports. It's not a long 5 seasons. Isn't long. It's nothing. And it's not even 5 really. It's practically 3 or 4. If we look at the soft launch of the Super League, which was in 2017, that was when the Super League was essentially launched, and then 2018. So we're looking at 3 years, and then we've missed a year this year anyway. So the rise of the game is just incredible. And I think that's the story in itself. And if that needs to be told through, I joined the sport in 15 and, I've been through the rise of the sport, then great. But then we can't forget about the women that, Brenda Dobeck and Lindsay Anfield, who have gone into coaching now, who went before me and, have, like I say, set that platform. So it's a massive honour to not only have this opportunity with Andrew and to maybe get bits of my story out there, because I think some of it's either probably not, not worthy of being written or and not necessarily doesn't need to be out there. The parts of where I've come from and how I've developed in this game and how the game's developed when I've been in it, it's just massive. It's huge, and I'm really grateful for that as well.
I think Phil asked you a question, Andrew, and then Danika just jumped in as she tends to do. If you can remember.
Okay, people need to realise it's a big honour. Thanks.
That's your fault for unmuting her, really.
Danika's
now I feel. No way.
Yeah, going back to Phil's point, it's a massive privilege to be able to, because I'll never play at Saints. I've tried breaking in after hours and they always find me. I'll never know what it's like to be in a changing room before a big derby match when you're really nervous and, you've got the crowd riding on you. And to be able to sit with people who can then tell you, one, with Danika and with some of the other people I've worked with in the past, some of the challenges they've either had to overcome in the formative years, perhaps, and then the way they achieve at the highest level when the pressure's on them. And I find that fascinating. And it is to be sat in a room with someone as they're telling you how they do that is incredibly powerful. I remember I worked with Eric Chisnall on writing the Chisnall's brothers story, and we had a real time sensitive limit on that because Dave was really ill at the time. And what we were able to do was get a draft for him to read before he passed away. But Genes Reunited, the YouTube channel, picked up on the book, and they did some filming with Eric and Les Chisnall, and they filmed at the home dressing room in Langtree Park. And I was sat just behind the camera as they were doing this extended interview about the growing up, where there was so many of them in a tiny house and they didn't have anything, but obviously going on to be 3 brothers who performed at Wembley and a 4th brother who's a professional boxer. And I was sat there thinking, I'm just some flump from St Helens. How lucky am I to be sat in this position? and how many people would love to be where I am now. And it's those moments that they're just so special.
Because we haven't mentioned him yet today. When you wrote Doug Lawton's book, did he mention Scoey as much as Scoey mentions him?
Doug was a legend. He was wonderful to work with. That was the actual first autobiography that I ghosted. And we had so much fun. You know, when he obviously brought Martin Afire into the game, Jonathan Davis, but was also part of the 1970 Ashes winning squad and achieved, you know, at Saints, Wigan, Widnes. We obviously there is a chapter on his time at Leeds, and he doesn't say much about Gary, so I guess you can draw your own conclusions.
Did you interview him on his houseboat, or had he not got it then?
We didn't get to go on the boat, Phil, which he used to love taking to Anglesey. But there was, I was only quite young then, really. So I was in my 20s, and very often when we were doing the interviews, there might be a little drink to one side on the table. So, but I've grown up now; I can't do that anymore.
That placates the fans of the legend while he's not here. You see, have you got a title for the book? Have you got a working title for the book?
No, and that was Danika's homework from our last interview. So obviously she'll have come up with something sensational.
Yeah,
Danika, my story. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Danika Priim, queen of the rugby scene, and a modern romance.
If only that was true.
Danika, if you've never heard that song, get it on YouTube.
I think the title of your column's good, but
Yeah.
that's only me throwing it in there.
Because that's obviously the most important thing is the cover and the title. Obviously, you know, all the stuff in the middle. That's, you know,
and the pictures. Nobody cares about the crafting of the 100,000 beautiful words. Has it got any pictures in it? Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Well, it is a rugby league book. Do you know what I mean? Like, isn't it a paint by numbers?
So Brian Glover's character in Porridge, isn't it? I read a book once. I read a book. Green it was. That's what you want to go for. How far down the line is it? Is it nearly done? Have you got loads more to tell?
It's gone remarkably well, considering obviously Danika's exceptionally busy. I work full time as well. We've got almost 50,000 words committed, which is not too bad at all. But there is still a lot of Danika's story to tell, and obviously as well, some of the people who've gone before her, you know, reflecting their journeys as well in as part of Danika's story. And no doubt she's going to win the double again next year. So we're probably going to have to find a way of putting that in as well.
I think you got the double mixed with treble there.
The hubcap count
unnecessary pressure on you, but if you want to be arrogant, that's fine.
No. It's not arrogance. It's confidence in my squad and my new coach.
Well said.
Yeah.
I'm going to come and watch you next season.
And the fact that we go back into pre-season tomorrow night. We're going to try again to have some training.
Good.
Yeah. Say a little prayer.
Have you got that yellow kit as well next year? Or is that in the bin now?
I've got no idea.
I mean, I ask all the important questions. You see.
I mean, we all know what I think is the answer to that.
Yeah.
So.
That seems.
Teletubbies, say hello.
Oh, Eddie.
Oh, no. 2020, Danika, you haven't played a game, but how have you found the season watching from the sidelines?
I am grateful that there has been something to watch. It's probably the best way to sum it up. Really grateful that we've managed to get some rugby back. Grateful to be to a couple of games. I say a couple of games. I've been to seen 5 games. So seen a few games. And yeah, what a dramatic season it's been, should we say? You know, with the COVID, with cancellations, with grand finals, with Challenge Cups. You know, it's had everything, hasn't it? And in such a short space of time. So yeah, to round 2020 up would be interesting. But yeah, grateful. Very sad that we've not had to do anything. You know, we were hopefully riding this wave of growing the women's game, and let's hope that wave is still going to be able to be ridden into 2021, and we pick it back up. You know, we've got some sponsors on board. We've got more teams in the Super League. We've got, you know, a World Cup where we need to prep the girls for. We've got a really young talent pool coming through. We've got academy teams now. There's so much, that's going to be great in the women's game that hopefully we can just pick up and carry on riding that further down the line.
All excited, by the way.
And then my good old housemate's going to make a cameo appearance.
Only part of it.
Yeah, she's trying to sneak through. Sneaking past me.
Andrew, I'm guessing you're in the same situation as I. I don't know if you got to see any games after lockdown. I didn't. But how did you find the year? Well, I mean, it started off not great for St Helens, but since the lockdown, everything seems to have gone your way.
I think early doors we played obviously the Sydney Roosters in that World Club Challenge, and I think we put an incredible amount into that game. And there was always going to be a dip afterwards because you can only peak so many times, as it were. It was interesting because then we lost the last game of rugby league I've been to was Saints and Huddersfield at Langtree Park, and we got beat. And there was some people around me, they know who they are, who wanted Christian Wolf out of the club, which I thought was slightly knee-jerk, really. And then when we came back after lockdown, as you say, sensational, beat Leeds 48-0. And I don't know why you brought that up, Rich. That was childish. You didn't need to mention that. But it was.
Do you want a book? Do you want any more content for your book?
So anyway, got to the grand final. Obviously beat Wigan, and the funny thing was about the grand final. Obviously, we were all sat separately, different homes. It wasn't that moment of going crazy on the terraces with your friends and your family. The amount of WhatsApp video calls and messages and phone calls, we all were trying to celebrate with each other. And it was that element of rugby league community where we wanted to see each other's faces, and we wanted, because I mean, I was just jumping up and down and running into the garden when Wellesby scored. I just lost my mind. And I think my greatest wish for rugby league and probably everything in 2021 is let's all get back together again at the stadiums and see each other and share those special moments, because that's the one thing I am really, really missing, is seeing my friends on a Friday night, at the game.
That famed rugby league family, Phil, community, whatever we want to call it. We do miss some people, not everyone.
It's funny, but the grand final almost summed up the entire season in 80 minutes. Again, you've already pointed out how privileged we are to have been to games. But when I arrived at Hull, and it was dark and it was cold, and you know how concrete that stadium is, and the media place is right up at the top. It's not the best to see a game. The feeling going into the ground was one of relief. Just that we got to that moment, that the sacrifices everybody had made had meant that we had a meaningful game to decide who were going to be the champions. By the time it finished, there was almost a sense of rejuvenation, that because it had exemplified everything that's best about this sport, you didn't want it to end. So you sort of got there and thought, the sooner this ends, the better. And then, we'll get fans back in and we'll get back to something that we recognise as a sport. And we'll write this year off and hope that, other than Toronto, everybody's got through it all right. And we'll have some semblance of something recognisable next year. And by the end of it, we didn't want it to stop. And fitting again that, the last point of the season was on the last play, chasing a lost cause. Well, again, if that doesn't sum up what we've been doing all year, I don't know what does. So yeah, one thing, I think there are two things. One is there are two major finals in a year, and as far as the rest of the world are concerned, what happens week to week is sort of our business, and they tend to dip in and out when there's Wembley or a grand final. And if you were to only take those two matches, which involved 4 different clubs on 2 very different stages, they were both epics. Nothing between the teams, down to the last play. Stories abounding on all 4 sides of who may or may not win, and what the heartbreak of some and the elation of others, and the resurrection of some and the perhaps the anticlimax for others. You had every narrative you could possibly want in those 2 finals, and I think that is an absolute credit to to the sport. I think the other thing is a lot of people spoke during the year about it's got to be an asterisk year, that when the record books are put together, the champions and the cup winners should have a star next to their name, and like they did in the war years, say it wasn't a real season. Having watched that grand final, it doesn't come much more intense than that. That was that stood the test of any grand final, and maybe because this is something that Brian Noble says in his column in the new 4020 magazine out on Friday, which I haven't mentioned yet, and I don't know how that slipped in. Maybe not having a crowd actually added to the intensity for the guys on the pitch, because there were no distractions, and you couldn't get caught up in the atmosphere and occasion because you had to create it. And it may well be that the quality of the game we got was actually because the players went out there and gave it absolutely everything, because that's all they could do. They couldn't feast off anything else. It had to be all for one and one for all. And I just think that we got to the point where the winners were worthy winners. The fare that was served up on the last night of the season was glorious. I think it's right to wait until March until we play again, because not only do the players deserve a long break, but I think if we can get to the point where we start with even limited number of fans in grounds, it changes everything. Goes back to what we were saying the other week, that I'd forgotten until I watched the third state of origin what it's like to have a genuine atmosphere in the ground. And it makes an enormous difference. It really does. Just to be part of something communal like that is sensation. And again, that takes the conversation right back to where we started. Why do people like Kevin Sinfield do what he does for a guy like Rob Burrow? Because it's that communal feeling that is generated by being involved in sport. And that's what we've missed. But I just think in terms of what we could have expected, I'm not sure we could have wanted much more, to be honest.
Obviously, bar the result of not being able to wind up your mate, Danika, what did you make of the grand final?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? I don't know if Andrew remembers, after a few wines texting me. I think maybe it was a voice note.
Who'd had a few wines, you or him?
Not me. I'm an athlete, Phil. I don't do that, honest. I think grand finals for me are always like finals in general. It was a great grand final. It was a showpiece. But for me, I always look a bit deeper. It's the passion, isn't it? It's that in the players. Like, you can see the players themselves, how bad they want it, how desperately they want it. It's that there's a do or die kind of vibe to the way they do things, the way they play, the way they talk to each other, they shout across the pitch. And you can see that passion, and yeah, that atmosphere thing. The thing, same with Wembley. Has it made it the dramatic showpiece that the end of the season should have been? And to be that close the way through, and to really have that fight that it had all the way through. To go to Golden Point or whatever would have been the absolute ultimate. But Wellesby came through, didn't he? And it's just the speed that would he have run? Interesting to see. Do you know the stats they had? When Ryan Hall scored in that semi-final, and they said actually the quickest stats for speed were when the players were running to congratulate him. What was Jack Wellesby's speed to chase that ball down? Do you get that extra, I don't know, power or whatever it is, because you play with such a different kind of feel when it's a final, and I thought you could really sense that.
So there's something interesting there, because again, one of the other things we've talked about is how do you capitalise on such a good final? Well, I think we do miss an opportunity by not knowing stuff like how fast players were running, and how it's sort of dripped out that Bentley made 69 tackles, and it's sort of dripped out that I don't know, Burgess played with a broken jaw. It's like, why don't we do more to celebrate and to explain and to go, wow? Because you suddenly say, well, his acceleration from the kick leaving the boot of Tommy Makinson to touching it down, contorting his body behind Bevan French, was the equivalent of 30 miles an hour. then you just go, that's astonishing, and maybe that's what we don't do enough.
Yeah, and like heart rate, I'd love to see different heart rates, because obviously as athletes we're looking at really low resting heart rates, 50 below, I guess, around the 50 to 60 mark maximum for resting heart rate. The heart rate of that last few minutes, the pressure that they're under to make the kick. What was Tommy Makinson's heart rate, knowing full well that he had to make that kick just before and then just after it bounced? I mean, maybe that's because I come from a sports science background. That's the type of stuff I'm interested in. But it's a similar kind of thing, isn't it? What pressure do these athletes put their bodies under, especially in the grand final? I think there was a female study about to take me for a prop during I think it's not either a long study or I can't remember. They took all of our GPS stuff at the World Cup, and then they were going to compare it to during the season and see what the physical differences and the physiology of the speed, the skill were based on the GPS unit. So it's something that people can do. The data's there. They analyze the data every game. So why not, on average, put it out there and show who is the fastest, a meters per second or whatever it is, the fastest acceleration. I think it'd be great. Well, there'd be a few people that'd be interested at least.
I was going to ask how annoying those GPS things are to wear, but that was just being facetious and a callback to earlier in the season. The great thing is, of course, whenever the union people put the stats up and it says a man made 2 tackles in a game and ran a meter, and we all go like that, because it's like comparing how many tackles Ben Stokes makes during the test match. It's irrelevant, but at least we can all feel superior for a minute on Twitter. And that's
I know,
what it's all about.
but then that was so annoying, because in the gain line, that's on. There's no 10 meters. There's no.
Don't bring facts.
There's no yardage.
Don't
No,
bring
I will, because it's so annoying, and it just. It's just. If I make a couple of meters in a union game, it means I've pushed over the gain line, which means I've made an advantage for my team. So
it is embarrassing, because it is, it's like I say, it's kind of like comparing it to something happening in cricket. But we don't put the stats out there enough to say, oh, look at how great we are, like Phil.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Well, I think there's a study going on at the moment to develop gum shield that can tell you the G-force of a collision, which is going to be part of an HIA protocol, so that people on the sidelines will be able to see the impact and whether there needs to be a player withdrawn because actually the speed that they've run into each other is endangering them. All stuff like that is absolutely fascinating, and you can make something of it.
Yeah,
science, the science behind rugby league. If I had the money and the wherewithal to make a program like that, we could make a documentary and stuff, but we don't. That's the problem. We just use Skype. This is the bit where I say to Phil, is there anything I've missed from the world of rugby league in this week that we need to speak about? Because I don't think there is there?
I don't think so, because I think the important thing is that we can develop topics outside of game-related issues, like talking about the sport, writing about the sport, extolling the virtues of the people that do things within the sport. So no, I mean, even if there has been a transfer, or Richard Marshall is now the coach of Salford, I'm not sure that makes a huge amount of difference.
Halifax Panthers. There you go. It's a thing. It's a thing. We wish them well.
Blue Sox.
Bring back the Blue Sox. I did mean to ask you, Danika, because we started with Leeds. Let's end with Leeds, because you won the Challenge Cup. The men did this time, so that Leeds now have all 3 Challenge Cups: the men, the women's, and the wheelchair. How pleased were you for your former coach to swan off into the sunset of Super League bound York Heritage City Knights, whatever? What is it called? Heritage Heartlands or something? I can't remember what they're going for. Heartland expansion, that's the hashtag. Leeds won the Challenge Cup, and Adam Cuthbertson got a medal. Were you pleased?
Yeah, massively so. No, he's a great guy, and has done wonders for the women's team, and he will be up there in my top 2-3 coaches that I've ever had throughout any sport that I've done. So made up for him. He's a few months younger than me, and we make a joke of that quite a bit. And so the fact that he's still got a contract somewhere, he is an old boy in the game now, and especially with the youth coming through. So, and he's still got a lot to offer, you know. And I'd say his career's been a bit of a roller coaster, and you know, and he's tried to juggle being a parent and having a degree or a master's or whatever it is. So he's trying to be a holistic kind of person now and not just have rugby league. So yeah, mega for him. And you know, the signings that York have got, they're do you know what I mean? It's not like he's, I wouldn't even say it's a bad move as such for now, you know, because his experience, his age, his ability will serve York very well. So, you know, I hope he goes well, and I hope I catch him in a few games. And you know, I dropped in a message just before the night before the Challenge Cup, just to say, you know, good luck. And he just texted me back saying, look, thanks for that, I really appreciate it. You know, and at the end of the day, he's just a guy that wants to play what he loves and do it well. So fingers crossed, you know, he's got another baby now, and he's just trying to make a way for his family. So I'll wish him well and hopefully catch him a bit in action.
They might be in Super League next year. And
I know, yeah.
Looking forward to it. And I do hope, I mean, I've heard rumours, whether it's true or not, that they're changing the music they come out to the thing from Dad's Army next year. But I don't want to say York, because they've got loads of people on Twitter and famous people saying how great they are and stuff. So, Phil, the magazine is out this week.
Yes.
I hit the deadline, which is amazing. But
the columns are all in.
Yes.
Just thought I'd mention that. The printing deadline was hit late last night, very, very late last night for some. And yes, it should be in the shops. Well, subscribers should get it Thursday and in the shops Friday. So what else would you want to read with an eggnog and a mince pie around the fire? Christmas Day, no games on Boxing Day. Read about the railways and rugby league.
And if not, obviously, and after you've read 4020, you want to read one of Andrew's books, which are available in all great independent bookshops across the country. Which, of all the ones you've written, Andrew, which one? I know that this is like asking people to choose between their children or their pets. Which one would you recommend at the top?
Oh, that's
like, that's like the worst question I could ask. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's a great question. He's got to answer it, otherwise he's soft.
Can you
next year? Obviously, the answer's different.
Person answer this for me, please. It's really difficult, but I would say, oh wow. Do you know what? It's not a rugby league book. Am I allowed to put that out?
Of course, you can promote whatever you
want. Called Mark Eccleston, and living in St Helens, I hadn't even heard of him, which was quite a disgrace to begin with. And he was the world's first, Britain's first world #1 in tennis. He did a Paralympics at wheelchair rugby, Paralympics at wheelchair tennis. Obviously, what he overcame, he did a somersault into a haystack when he was 16, ended up paralysed in a wheelchair after being on the books at St Helens. So he had a lot of things to overcome. We were nominated for the British Sportsbook Awards for that book, and I think it's still the only rugby league book to get shortlisted for that. So I must have done something right with that, but it was all down to Mark and his story. But I would probably sum up that the best is yet to come, and November Priim's book with Mr. Kaplan, that'll be the one to pick up.
Is it going to have lots of pictures in it?
Yeah, fill the pages.
It's going to come complete with dynamite.
Wow. Oh, we'll all look forward to that. Danika, anything you want to mention as we head off into the sunset of this episode?
Just that it's lovely to see your faces as ever.
You've been in isolation too long, clearly.
Tell me about it.
He'll all get back to not normal at some point. At least another one this week. Phil went off to the loo halfway through and asked us to cut it out. So that's a positive.
Did you leave it in?
No, I didn't. I respected our guest and cut it out. But I've mentioned it here now, so people will know.
Oh no, you've mentioned it here.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe this video, all podcasts, wherever you've downloaded it from, and leave a review. We're getting close to 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, so please tell all of your friends. They don't have to watch anything, just subscribe, and that's it. Buy the magazine, buy all of Andrew's books. We'll have another show later this week with another Leeds guest, I have to say.
Not just Leeds.
Well, yeah, and some other clubs and international, and I think Danika's favourite player, but I think.
You think?
I think.
I
But I'm
think
not gonna,
she models herself on him, I think.
yeah.
Oh, the possibilities.
Yeah, but we won't tell you who that is until we've recorded it, because I have the fear that everything goes wrong, even though it won't. Andrew, thank you very much for your time. Pleasure having you on. Great debut, another one. Danika, as always, obviously, you might come back again next year. I don't know. Will you come back on?
Always.
Well, it's. Thought I'd upset you
Always.
with those pictures last time of your pulling faces, but
Yeah, you can drop that out of it. I have a face for radio. We all know this. So just leave it there.
I think of the 4 people on this call right now, Danika. No offence to my brethren here, and Phil. I shall speak to you later in the week, but obviously, thank you for joining. And the shop's back open. Buy books.
Buy books.
Yeah.
Buy books.
And love to bubble and squeak.
Oh, thanks.
There's
I'll give him a
more
squeeze.
Roby tonight.
We'll see you all next time here on your favourite Rugby League podcast. And if it's not, well, there's nothing we can do about that.